Man, intros can be really hard. You say, hey, what's up everyone, for a couple of videos, but then that gets old, and then you want to greet your viewers in a new and unique way that doesn't sound cringy. And then you just end up standing here with nothing really to say, and yeah. Well, last video I'd said I'd be back at around May, and here you guys are. This video has been in the making since April 21st or so, and I said I'd get out another video before the end of May. Since most of my viewers on my channel are here for my Brawlhalla content, a Brawlhalla video is what you'll get. This specific video was centered not around one legend or one rank, but a versatile strategy that can be used between all legends. It's an absolutely massive part of how I got to Diamond, and something that almost all players go for from time to time, even stretching as far back as the Silver Division. Relying on it completely can get very predictable and can become a bad habit, but it certainly is the flashiest way to kill. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about guarding in my playstyle, or gimping. Behold, the cheap way to play that carried me to Diamond. Few points that I want to cover before this video actually starts though. Number one, that's not actually what gimping stands for. I honestly have no idea what all it's supposed to stand for, but the main purpose of it is to take away an opponent's stock or life by exerting as little moves as possible. Gimping is always done on the edge or off stage, and the purpose of it is to take away all of your opponent's options to recover to the stage and leave him too far down with no way left to get back up, killing him at an early health to gain a quick advantage. Number 2, understand that gimping can be done with any legend. While certain others are more suited for gimping, such as Teros or Yumiko, it can be done with any character. As long as you know how to use the weapon very well, each weapon can be used in their own unique way to gimp. It doesn't have to be all gauntlet crutching. And number 3, gimping is a super risky business. When you go for gimps, there's always a chance that your offensive window can be reversed upon you if you miss, and you can also be reverse gimped. If you're going to go for gimps in a specific scenario, and you're also going to need to be extremely good at recovering back the stage, which I will also cover later. So with that being said, let's begin. As cheesy as the action is, there are different ways to gimp and different types of gimping players if the action is speculated upon in a technical level. While there are many types of unique gimps such as accidental spikes downwards with axe, recovery, and nair spam with gauntlets, they all fall into one of two categories: active gimping or passive gimping. If you go into their actual definitions, here's what they both mean. Passive gimping is the act of waiting until your opponent is forced to return to the stage because he has no movements left, and simply meeting his character the moment he returns to the stage with a ground pound. Passive gimping is almost always done when the opponent is on low health as a simple way to close out the kill, as it'll almost never work if the opponent has enough recovery options left to simply go above your character. Active gimping is the act of purposefully going down with your opponent and using the move kit you have on your opponent to either take away his recovery options or to spike him further downward or away from where he wants to go. Active gimping is shown the most often as it's the only thing people bother to record for montages other than 0 to death combos, so it gets the most exposure, but in all honesty, it's a lot riskier. If you're going to actively gimp someone, you're going to want to make sure you hit all your attacks. There are some things you can do to further increase your gimping potential, so let's get into it. A good way to learn how to start gimping is to memorize all the moves on the weapon that you have that drags your opponent downward. For example, ground pound on all weapons spikes downwards, but that's pretty obvious. You're going to need some more material if you want to become a better gimper. For example, on hammer, recovery spikes downward, gravity cancel downlight to chase dodge recovery spikes downward, down air off a slanted edge spikes downward, side air off a slanted edge spikes downward. For gauntlets, side air spikes downward, neutral air spikes downward, and down air spikes downward. For sword, gravity cancel D-light into dare spikes downward, and so forth. Memorizing all these spiking downward options is essential to taking off more stocks, because using only ground pound to force your opponent off stage rarely ever works. Keep in mind that pushing your opponent off to the side is also viable as a gimping option as well. It doesn't just have to be downward. With that being said, it's also a good idea to memorize the attacks on your weapon that push off to the side. Again, examples given: Sair with essentially every weapon, ground pound with spear, and etc, etc. I'm not here to give every moveset on every weapon because that would just take up way too much of your time. I'm here to provide the essential advice that you need to know so you can practice for yourself. So yeah, once you memorize all moves that can gimp away from the stage and downward, you've learned the first step. The second is knowing how to use said moves in your arsenal effectively. After you memorize the hitboxes and all gimp options of your weapons, the next part is knowing when to use them. In general, there are 3 ideal options to use a setup for a gimp. Every other situation is a pure shot in the dark that will likely miss, so it's going to be pretty important to memorize these positions. The first position is when your opponent misses a ground pound on you. If your reflexes are fast enough, sometimes you'll catch your opponent setting up a dash jump ground pound, and you can catch him falling with his weapon pointed downwards at a momentum he can't cancel out of. This is when horizontal or diagonal gimp should be used. Good examples of gimps out of this situation include down airward bow or gravity cancel downlight into chase dodge recovery with hammer. I highly advise against trying to counter gimp your opponent by going back on top of him and going for another ground pound. It gives him a lot of time to reposition himself and move out of the way, along with putting you in an even lower position than before. This is the least common opportunity you're going to get in higher divisions like Platinum and Diamond, because most opponents will give you the respect that you have fast reflexes to dodge out of this, and they won't give you the opportunity. However, the next 2 windows are pretty universal, even in mid-diamond. The second position is when you know your opponent is in his recovery animation. This is the easiest to read when your opponent is a lance main, but it can be done with every weapon. When your opponent is using recovery, he will be locked in a fixed animation of movement that is readable and can be used to get damage. However, the way to punish a recovery is different for each weapon and each position. Because of this, I think it'll be simple to cover the most appropriate ways to punish based on the position you're in for gimping. If you happen to be on the stage while your opponent is trying to get back to stage, a weapon throw would work best. Or if you're that confident in the read, a ground pound. However, keep in mind that with certain weapons such as sword and spear, the enemy can control their own movements while they're recovering, and that can make it that much harder to land the ground pound. It's often much simpler to cancel out their recovery with a weapon toss, and they'll be in that much more trouble, running out of ways to get back to stage, making a passive gimping a very safe option to use. If you happen to be around the same area where your opponent is, both of you off stage and you know he's about to recover, I recommend getting away from your opponent as fast as possible, and he has to use his recovery to get back. Move away from the stage and hit him with a side air and chase dodge upwards when he touches the wall. The only time you shouldn't do this is when doing so will essentially kill you. You're just going to have to touch the wall with him and take the hit, but it's better than taking your own stock. Other good ways to punish a recovery read is horizontal gimps. Examples of good counters are Gravity Cancel Neutral Light with Sword, Gravity Cancel Lord Vrax's Down Sig with Lance, or if you're feeling extra fancy, you can drop quickly below them and throw out a Gravity Cancel Neutral Sig with Yumiko's Hammer or Teros' Axe. A recovery read can actually be pretty hard to punish in game, but if you get it off, it gives you the highest chance of actually killing your opponent with the Gimp, instead of just building up damage on them, since it's the one that produces the flashy stars that we all like to cause but hate to see done to us. And finally, for the third position, if you happen to be below your opponent, the only thing I can recommend to you is just try to be the last one to recover to the stage. That way, your recovery back to the stage can deal damage to your opponent, and depending on your weapon, you can even fling him back down with a hammer and whatnot. In all honesty, this position is really just a no-brainer, and so is this next one coming up. The third position in which it's ideal to Gimp is when your opponent is just going to barely make it back to stage with all his recovery options. And edgeguarding this is simple, just time your ground pound to meet him when he's about to get back to stage, and that'll reset the cycle entirely or take his stock. With that out of the way, we're out of the way to do all the same Gimps to do in-game. But I'm sure that's not the type of Gimps you're here to learn about. You're here how to do the clips, the unsafe Gimps that probably kills both of you, the ones with pure style. There are some guidelines to doing this as well, but a word to the wise when doing this stuff. I recommend only doing this when you have a red stock. If you have a stock with a lot of damage to soak up left, just don't try this. There's a pretty good chance you'll also kill yourself doing this in the process, and it would be a shame seeing the rest of that stock go to waste. This is more of a kamikaze attack to demolish both of your stocks, and you need to know how to do it properly should you decide to take this risk. First things first, you need to find an opening. There are two main openings that I see for this. Number 1, your opponent misses a dash jump ground pound, or number 2, you send him off stage with a move that ends with force, such as side air with hammer or bow. Let's cover each part separately, so I can provide detail and more clarity. Hey everyone, it's your friendly free-for-all player, Queen Nye McHeartstuck in Gold, and I recently found out about this new spear move that's really cool. Who needs all of this stupid script when you can just spam downsig on the edge with spear? It's totally unpunishable, the area of effect is crazy large, and you can just repeat the moves until the cows come home.
Queen Nye Spear available for the cost of your soul. Side effects may include endless trash talking and an ability to gain elo past 1500 and being extremely slow. Please consult with your local Diamond or Platinum mentor before using this.
The first thing I want to cover regarding active unsafe gimping options is if you miss your chance to capitalize on the enemy's mistake, reset to neutral as quick as you can. You're on the edge with a limited amount of jumps, even less now after your missed attack, so get yourself back on the stage. Alright, we clear on that? Good. Now let's get to capitalizing on option 1, the missed dash jump ground pound. Regarding these, the appropriate way to punish them is by horizontal or diagonal gimps. Assuming you've studied up your Gimp options, you'll want to start out with something like Gravity Cancel Downlight into Ground Pound on the Unarmed, Gravity Cancel Downlight into Nair on Gauntlets. Anything that spikes downward is a good starter option. With this, you'll have turned the situation into your favor. Now, listen up here because this next part is very important. Once your opponent is below you, he'll often try to go away from the stage because he's been gimped so many times being close to it. There are several ways to read this. Sometimes you can simply dare with your weapon that will catch him, or weapon throw. After that, he'll most likely be in a situation where he can only get back using all of his recovery options. Something you know, a situation in which you know what to do. Just reset the cycle again, putting on more damage on him, and in this position you have a choice. You can take your gains and go back to stage with this seriously damaged stock, or you can go for the entire stock deletion, but to do this you need to pull off one more read. Should you choose to go for the second option, keep in mind most players will instantly try to go for the wall once they memorize that going away from the wall that did not work. Capitalize on that and deliver the finishing blow. And congratulations, you gimped yourself a stock. The second option I want to cover is when you're the one to push your opponent off stage. This is a little less ideal because he's going to be on the defensive instead of on the offensive, but it is still possible to Gimp from this situation. You're just going to need to pull off another read. Should you land a side light or a side air on an opponent to get him off stage, keep in mind you have some chase dodges to follow further up with an attack. Chain dodging up and forward into a ground pound is a possibility depending on how close you are to your opponent. Another possibility is you can try to simply ground pound near the edge, but this is a lot more chance based than the follow-ups I suggested when your opponent misses an offensive attack, the only difference being that your first punish is guaranteed when your opponent misses versus when you're on the offensive. However, if you do manage to get that second hit off on your opponent, it transposes to simply reading your opponent for the Gimp. Try to read his move away from the edge of the map, etc, etc. And that's it. That's pretty much the basics on how to edgeguard properly, as those are pretty much all the situations in which a Gimp is viable, and how to properly pull one off. Before I end this video though, I may as well provide some miscellaneous tips on what can help a bit if you're really determined to take that stock off. Don't expect to land a Gimp every time. Gimping, even with all of these pointers, is super chance based since almost every attack you land for a Gimp has to be a read. And we're done. At the end of the day, Gimping is not so much a technical strategy as it is a massive call out on somebody based off reads entirely. Don't be one of those players that just fishes for Gimps, as that often won't work should you choose to incorporate it into your playstyle and pull it out as an attack of surprise, it can catch a few stocks on even top players. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.